Linus. Wait, that's the wrong Linus. This one is one of the most in-depth and probably one of the coolest characters in Stardew Valley. And with that, and his amazing Stardew Valley fanbase that exists on multiple platforms, makes Linus have one of the most in-depth and secretive lore of any of the NPCs that exist in the game. And with that out of the way, I'm going over 10 lore-based things about Linus. Starting off with number 1. So happens to be that Linus could have possibly been the founder of Joja Corporation. Well, if you don't know a bit about Joja, it's the almighty corporation that exists in the Stardew Valley universe, and the player used to work for it before the player decided to take up life on his grandfather's farm. There's a lot of theories about why you chose to take up life on the farm, but for this one it's saying that Linus might have actually been the owner of Joja. Though this does have a bit of background in 2 parts. Basically, the story goes that Linus and your grandfather founded Joja. Basically, your grandfather had so much good farming materials that he made from the farm that he made the corporation what it is, selling amazingly great products. Linus, though, turned greedy and wanted to move the corporation out of Stardew Valley. Basically, Linus sold the company, made a bunch of money, selling it in Zuzi City, while your grandfather decided to stay and farm within Stardew, like he'd always done, and made a bunch of money. When Linus heard of your grandfather's illness, he pitched a tent back in Stardew and stayed there, never forgetting the kindness from your grandfather. I guess this kind of plays into some part about how Linus will save you and cares about the valley the same way your grandfather did. There's a second story along similar lines to the first one, where instead of Linus and your grandfather was Linus and Morris, and they were partners in making the corporation. And they were running it successfully, but when they wanted to expand to Stardew Valley, and they found out that Pierre's shop was there, they had trouble establishing it due to the whole mom and pop shop type thing. Basically, people would rather buy local than buy from Joja. Wonder why there's no school in Stardew Valley? That's because Linus and Morris decided to demolish it to build Joja Mart there, to rival Pierre's store within the town itself. Then Linus suddenly had an epiphany, realized he didn't want to go down the dark path and become like Morris, a evil character depending on what side of the Stardew Valley lore you're going for. And that's why he chose to live his simple lifestyle up in the mountains, rejecting all Joja products, and it could mean that the corporation has bad history with him. Linus is some deity. This theory revolves around Linus being Yoba, the deity or god that many people are involved with in Stardew. So the thing goes that Linus, being overly connected to the earth, the whole fact that he wears golden leaves, and his tent location are shaped like a shrine. The result of the whole thing about how whenever you pass out, he is one of 4 people other than an adventurer and some doctors that find you. Linus was a chef. This theory ties into his One Heart cutscene where Linus is found digging through trash cans and Gus comes out and gives him food out of companionship, possibly due to have been worked together before. There is also the fact that he gives you the recipe for sashimi, which is a top-tier dish performed by very skilled chefs from Japan, and that he was cooking a roast at the luau. This one's reasonable, but it's also the fact that he lives in a tent that's interesting for a former Gordon Ramsay level chef. Linus is a war veteran. Which war, we don't know, but the way his tent looks, the way his stuff is set out within the tent, other than for game realism and making it look nice, is to some standard military. There is sort of possibility that Linus could have been a war vet, then left homeless. His ways of survival could have been some form of training, and now he, other than Marlin and the medical personnel, can rescue the player if they pass out, use medical skills that he could possibly practice during the war. There is also an older forum post that I found, referencing him being tied to the character from the film Leave No Trace, where a war veteran with PTSD has a similar experience to Linus, where the main character lives in the forest in a tent and only goes to civilization to get supplies for himself and his daughter. Linus was the wizard, wizard's apprentice, or wizard something. This is the biggest and one of the most well-known theories of Linus, and that he was at one point the wizard's apprentice or was another wizard. Now, like the whole Joja one, this one actually does have multiple stories according to the community, but I'm going to go over one of the big ones, which is related to how he's found next to the wizard during events, his old friendship with the wizard, which could also explain how he's somewhat immortal of sorts, who actually is M. Jasper, and how he stores some of his items. But how exactly would this make him homeless? Well, some people say that he uses dark magic for bad or evil purposes, possibly during the Elemental Wars, which were very long ago in Stardew Valley terms, and then chose to give up all magic and live down to earth within his tent. The main backing for this is he's good friends with the wizard, then he's out of bounds with the wizard during the Spirits Eve festival. Interesting. Linus is a druid. Ties into the very last one very clearly, but it's due to the whole spiritual magical thing. But according to game lore, the present races, and how Linus acts in game, this one's actually very unlikely. But again, according to the Celtic lore that druids actually come from, They're heavily acquainted with the Earth, therefore the comparison could be made, though it is a little off, and I would be more towards the wizard one than the actual one about him being a druid. The Sebastian and Linus friendship. This sort of ties into lore, but is mainly the whole fact that Linus and Sebastian seem to be good friends, possibly giving gifts, and seeing each other nearby each other, but that also might be due to Robin's house being literally just down the mountain from him. As with the whole Wizard is Abigail's father, and Shane might be Jazz's father, theories and proofs, there is the possibility that the fact might be that Linus is actually Sebastian's father and was dumped in the mountains. There is also the reference to this guy in a mod pack about the other Linus Sebastian from 5 years ago. Linus used to be really rich. This is an interesting one. It goes back to a forum post about how there were character sprites of him wearing fancy clothes, which I did a lot more digging into and are present on the sprite sheet, yet unused. They also portray a younger Linus, so this could be part to do with some flashback within a future update, or just left as unused as it is. Now, this could also tie into how he owned Joja or some other big company, but it's speculated he mainly got his fortune from inheritance. But he didn't like the fame and the whole thing about the people and the fame, media, you know, and he gave it all up to get down to nature. Interesting. This one I might go back into later. Adventuring Party. This is based on a theory from a Reddit user with this very not appropriate name here, and it basically goes after how Linus was possibly a member of an adventuring party with Marlin, Gil, and the Wizard, and the Mariner guy, the guy that sells mermaid pendant on rainy days. So they do their whole mining and adventuring thing in the mines, and everything's going good. Then some sort of collapse or freak accident happens that kills the Mariner. Maybe it results in the mermaid's pendant, which is why he only sells them on rainy days in the specific spot near Elliot's cabin. After that, the party broke up due to the death of their friend. The Wizard locked himself in the tower, where you meet him today. Gil and Marlin decided to keep using the guild location as the Adventurers Guild to keep Stardew Valley safe, while Linus couldn't go back to his normal life without the death of his friend. So he chose to instead give up what he had of normal life and return to nature, possibly over the site of where either the body was buried or the accident happened, as a sort of token to remembrance of his dear friend. The Linus Sprites. Well, back to the discussion earlier about whether or not Linus was actually rich, there is a whole bit about the sprites' existence. But why do they actually exist on the sheet? Well, there's not actually much information about them, and according to the person who brought them up, they're unused. But what I'm specifically going after here is, compared to the other ones, is they show a younger Linus. So what exactly were these sprites originally intended for here? Well, I'm speculating it might have been involved in either a future or planned cutscene for Linus, where he almost goes into a flashback and explains his past. Now, this could have been intended for something in the past, then scrapped, or something completely else, maybe in the 1.6 update. You can post your own take in the comments below, and I might review it, or even if Concerned Ape himself sees it, I would be impressed to hear him explain why those exist. So that's 10 very interesting lore bits about Linus. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing to support my content, and maybe comment something about one of these theories that I brought up. Maybe check out another epic video along with this. Otherwise, have an amazing day. This was the Penguin Corporation. Goodbye.